All right, what's up, folks? Welcome. We're here to show you how to win big using our MLB lineup optimizer, lineup builder, OccupyFantasy.com, MLB DFS strategy, picks, FanDuel, DraftKings. This specific stream is for the April 26th Tuesday slate, but we're planning to do this video and put it out. That way you have plenty of ideas and strategies from me, an MLB DFS player, and the guy who created the entire lineup builder. That way, we get a lot of people who ask us, hey, what's the best way to use your lineup builder for MLB? We hope that this video can serve as that tutorial for you. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder at Occupy Fantasy, joined by Jack, the creator, the architect of dfsMagic's lineup builder. Jack, what's up, man?
Hey Brian, how are you doing today, man?
I am doing great, doing great. Happy to have you on board here. I know we've been trying to do this video for a couple of weeks now, but I'm glad to have you here because there's been a lot of updates and amazing changes to the lineup builder. For those of you who are new and you're like, what the hell is this on the screen next to us? That's the lineup builder at Occupy Fantasy. Jack literally taught himself how to code, created it. We wanted to build lineups the way we want to build them and not use other optimizers out there. So he created this. It's an amazing tool. And through the next hour until about 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to show you how to use it properly, how we use it, how Jack uses it to build 150, how I use it to build for small field lineups, and I think it'll be really insightful. If you guys have questions along the way, either about the builder or about tonight's slate specifically, go ahead and throw them in the live chat there to the right of the YouTube screen, and we'll happily answer them along the way. There'll be some downtime while we're building and the builder is running, so let us know. Let's see, we got Adam in the chat. What's good? Patrick, what's up, man? So Jack, I guess let's answer this first question here before we dive right into it. Adam says he has a big GPP question. I believe he said in our Discord server, which if you're not a member, click the join button below this video. Earlier said that for your one-off in a big GPP, would you rather take a guy that's 6.5 in OF index and nearly 10% owned, or a guy that's like 3.5 OF index and 0 to 1% owned?
Yeah, I'll answer a little bit and I'll throw it back at you. I think generally, one-offs, you don't really care as much about ownership and you more just care about can that guy reach value, which mostly in baseball is hitting a home run, right? So I would tend to go for the highest OF index players. I think that is, you tell me if you disagree, but I think that is the pitching model is probably the best thing ever, just a cheat code. But other than that, the OF index correlating to power and home runs is probably the best thing it does. So I think it's great strategy for one-offs to just look for those really high OF index players, owned or not. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And it just depends on the rest of your lineup. If you have maybe a popular five-man stack or a popular secondary stack, maybe you, especially in a big GPP, maybe you shy away from the guy who's 10% owned and you just drop a little bit in OF index and get the guy who's 3% owned, 4% owned. Definitely adds up. So, all right. So what you see on screen here is the lineup builder. I'm going to go full screen to the builder. I'll bring our faces back every now and then as we answer questions. So let me do that here. A little tech magic.
And Brian, while you're doing, I always want to talk about big wins. You've been on a little hot streak here, and you almost took down an MLB last night. You just got pitchered at the end.
Oh, dude, yeah, I did get pictured at the end. I think it was second in the 250. Took down a bunch of satellites. Could have had more satellites. But yeah, big win after UFC. It's funny they come in bunches sometimes like this, so I'll gladly take it. Got a bunch of tickets to the 1K tonight, so I'm hoping that that variance continues.
Oh yeah, I forgot that's tonight. That's awesome.
Yeah. So all right, let's
How
see
many
here.
how many got in there? How many entries you got in there?
I only had one leading up until tonight, and then I picked up three more last night. So got three
Okay,
chances here at
be a little
200.
crazy with it then.
Yeah, you got that right. That's for sure. So, all right, let me pull up on my screen on my side here so I know what I'm talking about. All right, so yes, here we go. So we got the lineup builder up. And again, if you don't know about this, occupyfantasy.com/lineup builder. And Jack, what I have highlighted first here is the slate group feature because before we went live here, what I've done is I literally use this feature every time I build lineups, right? The slate group feature of 5 different groups allows you to build 5 different sets of lineups. And how I use it is for different contest types. So maybe for UFC on Saturday this past weekend, I had a slate group for my 150 max. I had a slate group for my small field. And I even had a slate group for cash lineups because I want to make different rules for each types of lineups. So Jack, in this particular one for tonight, I have a small field slate group, which I'll showcase how I use it to build the 150 max, which I'll lean towards you more because I don't play as much 150 max MLB, and it's different, a little slightly different rules. And basically, what you can do, you can slide between the groups to build different types of lineups. Jack, do you use it any other different way for MLB?
I do use it for one thing. In any sport, I think we've all probably experienced this where you run it and it's a pretty good run, and you're like, I'd be okay with keeping this, but you have some time, and you might want to try for a little bit different, maybe make it a little stricter, cap off some exposures, whatever, right? But like, you don't want to lose that run. That's another great you just all you need to do is copy your current group to a new one, and then you can mess around with your current group as much as you want. And if you quote unquote break it, like you don't get to convergence or you ruin some other part, you still have your other one. You just go to the other slate group and it's there. So that's another great way to use this.
Right. So I just showed you on the screen here how to do that, right? I named my third group, which I'm not using, keeper. Maybe this is the one we want to keep later. And then I copied this group, group one to group three. Now this slate group, automatically everything, lineups, rules, settings, exposures, all get copied to group three. We can keep that if we want to. We can keep playing around in this particular group. I see we got Q in the chat. What's up, man? Q has been on a run himself, one of our Discord members. So maybe we need to steal some of his variants because he's been doing really well. So, Jack, let's just stick with the basic settings here. And I'm in the small field setting, right? So on the far right, basic. How I use it, and again, maybe others use this differently, but for me, small field lineups, I'm only building 4 to 6 lineups per slate for my small field lineups. I'm taking these 4 or 6 lineups, I'm putting them in different contests. I do this for all types of different sports. And the update you recently pushed a couple of weeks ago now allows us to build up to 300 lineups in the lineup builder, which is great for this type of exercise because now we just get even more combinations of lineups. So, Jack, what I do, I set the lineup count to 300. I set a min and max salary. I make it as wide as possible within reason, and then I run my builds, and this gives me 300 different types of lineups that I can sort through and look through to see which ones fit the best for me, which teams are pairing well with each other, which players are being used without a bunch of other rules. And I really love this approach for small field contests.
Yeah, it's genius, man. I mean, I've copied you on it. I hope other people are doing it, and I think doing it for baseball is really unique because like hockey, right? It's a stacking sport, but you can kind of just eyeball the price and you kind of know what fits. But with baseball, especially when we'll get into the position, the gaps between hitters and just the positions, it's really hard to just sort of eyeball two teams and lineups and like get a sense if they fit. But if you do it this way, you're going to naturally see which teams are being used together or not, right? And I assume that would really save you some time trying to jam certain teams together that you like.
Right, because we do get questions often. It's like, I only make one lineup per night. Should I still use the lineup builder? And I think from just intuition, you would think, no. Why would you use a builder that builds up to 300 lineups to build one? But for me, it's easy because I can put in all these rules, build it. It takes a few minutes, and now I get the optimal approach for different lineups. Because if I go to the multi lineups tab at the top here, which again, I've already built lineups for this group, and the team pair exposure tab shows me which combinations of teams are being used most frequently in the lineups that I've created using these rules. And so let's just say I wanted to use Houston tonight. I looked through myself. I was like, wow, I love Houston as a stack. If I type in Houston in the search bar, it shows me all the Houston combinations. And now I see that Houston is most often used with Chicago, or Houston is most often used with Toronto. And now I know I can go hand build myself if I want to, that those two teams, based on their positions, fit the best with Houston.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to use it. And it also kind of tells you, from a projection standpoint, right? Like which teams together are creating the highest projection because obviously it's it is an optimization. It's trying to build lineups with the highest OF index overall. So if you see Houston paired in this example with Chicago, not only do the positions fit, but it also probably means that you're getting some of the best OF index players in that lineup together.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great reason too. And for those of you who don't know what OF index is, we mentioned it a couple times here. Let me go back to the builder. The builder imports from our Occupy model, occupyfantasy.com. I'll pull it up really quickly just so you can see what this looks like. Ranks every player, batter, pitcher, stack, FanDuel, DraftKings. Using our proprietary metric, takes over 50 metrics into account. And it's not your normal fantasy point projection. It's anywhere from 0 to 10 plus for batters, anywhere from 5 to 20 plus for pitchers. Anything over 10 is elite for batters. Anything over 20 is super elite for pitchers. So just keep that in mind as we talk about OF index. All right, let's see here. Let's go back to the builder. A couple questions here, Jack, while we're looking here. Patrick says, do you do a cursory check on what pitchers are on the slate and automatically X some of them out? So for me, you might see here, let me pull up pitchers here for my small field group.
This is a great question. I was actually going to tee up and ask you how you approach pitchers with this. If you have any rules you follow or exposures. What are your thoughts on how you approach the pitchers?
So a lot of times, what I'll do, I'll pull up the pitcher model first, right? And here it is, OccupyFantasy.com, the pitcher model. And I'll thumbs up because in small field, I'm not as strict as the players I want to use. I want to let the builder do its thing. You let the model do its thing. And so I'll thumbs up the first, 5 or 6 pitchers, find a natural cutoff in OF index. And then I'll usually X out the bottom guys unless there's some major reason, major line move, strikeout potential, whatever it may be. But if we go back to the builder, you'll see that I thumbs up the first 7 or 8 guys. Freed actually has jumped up in OF index since I did this about an hour ago. And then I cross out the bottom guys, right? So that leaves me 6, 8 guys I really like, 3 to 4 guys I necessarily wouldn't mind using, and then 8 other guys that, okay, I don't want to use these guys whatsoever, no matter what the builder tells me. And then maybe I'll make a rule, Jack. It's like, okay, don't have 2 really shitty pitchers together, minimum of one of these top 8 guys or something.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Even in the 150 max, it's pretty similar. Obviously on DraftKings, you probably see it. It sometimes falls in love with those super cheap pitchers, but they do show up in the optimal lineup a lot, right? So you got to kind of balance that out.
Yeah, exactly. And as often as you see those really bad pitchers, they do show up sometimes. So it gives me some flexibility. And again, the builder might not use them, like these middle tier guys, right? So let them see what it does. Because if I was hand building, I would probably never use a Nick Pavetta or a McKenzie based on their ranking, but maybe based on the lineups that they're creating, maybe some combinations they fit in really well. All right, so basic, we got that covered, right? We talked about that. Advanced. And again, for tutorials on specific settings, specific uses, Jack has a bunch up on his YouTube channel, the dfsMagic YouTube channel. It's also in the green icon, the top right of the builder, the green question mark. If you want specific tutorials, go check those out. Make sure you watch those before you use the builder at all. We're here to talk about just how we use them specifically for strategies. So Jack, again, I said I'm not using strict mode. I'm letting the builder do its thing. If we go over to the other slate group, let's go over to the 150 max slate group where, let's say this is yours and you want more control over who you're using in your 150 lineups. And this may take a second because I'm running 7,000 programs on my computer at this time. So
Yeah, hey, while it's going, the other place you can find the videos, if you see those little tiny red YouTube icons next to features, and you click those, you will get the tutorial for that exact feature. So I think we've hopefully put the videos in so many different places now that people will stumble on them eventually.
I would think so. I would
They're
hope so.
they're really good videos, guys. I mean, a lot of them, Brian is sitting there literally explaining how he builds lineups that he makes all this money with. So like it's really worth your time to watch them.
Yes, definitely. All right, so my computer finally decided to kick it in gear. We're over to the 150 max slate group, and as you'll see here, Jack, why don't you explain a little bit the one-off versus the stack columns on the left, and how you use them for if you're building 20 to if you're entering 300 lineups, sure, but 15, 20 to 300 lineups.
Yeah. So first thing, pitchers and goalies and quarterbacks. Uh, when you'll notice if you click one off or stack, it just checks both boxes, and that's because that's like the first position that it's filling, and also those players don't apply to the idea of the stack. When we talk about a stack in baseball, we're talking about hitters. In hockey, we're talking about skaters. So don't worry about oh, I want to one off this pitcher and not stack him. Well, we can get into how you stack a pitcher with hitters, but just realize that's what it's doing there. Now, if you go to any hitters, like you've got Trout down there on the screen, if you can actually in strict mode select the one-off box or the stack box or both. Stack box meaning when the lineup builder is trying to choose a stack, it's going to consider those players. One-off box is just that. It's if it's looking for a player in a lineup construction like a 5-2-1 with a single one-off hitter, it's only going to look at players in that one-off column. And again, like you showed, when you're not in strict mode, it will consider basically all players for either stack or one-off unless you are actually excluding them.
Yeah, in that case, what I'll do sometimes is I'll do a rule, or I'll just exclude guys that are like 8 and 9 hitters per se, just in my small field builds, right? Because you don't need to be perfect. You don't have to get too crazy with lineups. And here in this example, LA, what I did just as an example here is Max Stassi and above. Both those guys have a 4.9 OF index or higher. There's a little bit of a tier there below Stassi, and I'll use Trout, Walsh, Otani, Ward, Stassi as one-offs. Like if the builder wants to use them as in a two-man stack or a one-off, that's fine. But as far as these other guys, Marsh, Rendon, Velasquez, Tyler Wade, I only want them used because their OF index is pretty low if they're maximally correlated with other Angels hitters.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. And one other note on strict mode, I think a lot of times I'll be building in strict mode and I won't be getting the amount of lineups I want. And I'll just turn it off and run it because then you can see what it's using that you don't have in your pool, and you can say, okay, usually in baseball it's something like a particular position like second base or shortstop where you don't see as many stronger guys or catcher on DraftKings. You'll see, it's using like 30% of some second baseman that I don't have in my pool. So then I say, okay, I'll go back to strict mode, but now I know I need to, add some more of those players, or maybe if I set max exposures, open those up a little bit. So it is useful to kind of go back and forth as you're trying to get to the lineups that you want.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's go back to the settings here on the right. Randomizer, we get this question pretty frequently too. I pretty much always leave it on high if I'm building a bunch of lineups, Jack, just because I want the players just evenly distributed. The one time I will leave it on low is if I'm building cash type lineups, low risk lineups, 50-50s, double ups, head to heads. Like for instance, on Saturday for MMA, I was building one lineup for my low risk contest, and I'll leave it on low there, and I'll put some rules in because I would just want to see what the optimal build is based on these rules. I'm not necessarily looking to get diversity because I'm just picking one lineup out of the 300 that it builds that is built the most optimally. So that's the only time I use it other than high. I don't know if you have any other uses.
No, I think that's right. I mean, or say you got a really small field, high risk, but something like that, right, where you're just concerned with trying to find the highest projected lineups possible without any consideration of getting some variance or diversity in there. But generally, if you're building a large amount of lineups, I would leave it on high. Medium is okay too, but that's where I'd go with that.
Cool. And then we have the stacking feature, right? Which it defaults to full stacks, which is most of the time what you're going to want to do because in baseball, you want to have 5-3 stacks on DraftKings, 4-4 stacks on FanDuel. If you're using one-offs, maybe a 5-2-1, a 4-3-1. But there are scenarios where you want to do partial stacks or no stacks at all. We saw it win last night on DraftKings, the fabled 2-1-1-1-1-1-1-1-1 stack with a single bullet. So maybe he used the no stacks feature. But again, I guess how I would use this sometimes, Jack, maybe there are some slates where I'm like, I like a 5-man stack, but maybe data shows that you don't necessarily have to have a secondary stack, maybe a 5-1-1-1, right? So then you could build some lineups with partial stacks. That would include a full 5-man stack and then not worry about stacking for the secondary. Is that correct?
Yep. So partial is just basically starting a lineup with a full stack, and then it will go basically, I just say NBA style, right? Just no stacking, just pick the best player each time that it's filling a spot. And then no stacking is, it's basically just like NBA, right? You're just building lineups based on the player. Yeah, there are some, I'd say especially on the bigger slates, and perhaps if you see a slate where there's a ton of guys with huge OF indexes, that could be a situation where you want to lean a little more one-offs as opposed to stacking. So yeah, I mean, generally we recommend full stacking. It's pretty clear it's the most profitable thing in the long run. But of course, there are situations, and people wanted that flexibility, so we added it in.
For sure. For sure. And the next feature, one-off stack balance, which I admittedly don't use much yet because I'm not using many exposures, but I know Jack uses pretty frequently. Basically, we're just trying to give you as much control as possible over your lineups, right? So what this does is it tells the builder when it's building lineups, whether or not to prioritize your stack exposures. Like let's just say I want 15% of these guys, Ohtani, Ward, right? All these guys. If I leave it on auto, the builder will figure it out. If I choose it to stack, it'll prioritize those guys in stacks more, where if I choose one-off, it'll prioritize those guys as one-offs more. I think I have that right, Jack.
Yeah, mostly. So the bottom line is when you're setting these min player exposures, it depends whether you are stacking that player or one-offing that player or both. So when you set a min exposure to a guy that is only in stacks but not as one-offs, builder's going to see that and say, okay, I need to add more LA Angels stacks. But if that guy, like in this example, like Ohtani, it's 15% and he's a one-off, it's going to say, okay, I need to add 15% Ohtani. And when you leave it on automatic, all it's doing is it's looking at each time it makes a decision. It's trying to figure out, like, are there more one-offs that need to be used, or are there more stacks that need to be used? And it will, and so let's say in this case you have a bunch of one-offs with min exposures that haven't been met. It's going to say, okay, I need to do one-offs. So it's going to start the lineup with one of those one-off players, as opposed to default behavior where it picks a stack first and then it fills the one-offs and then it would fill the last stack. So it definitely takes probably a little getting used to, a little bit of just messing around with it to see what it does. But I guess I'll ask, did that explanation make sense? Any questions that you would have on that?
No, it makes sense to me, and I think it's really only for super experienced players that are very particular about their lineups and what they're trying to do.
I,
Vast
I
majority
I
of people
can,
aren't going to use them, right? I would think.
yeah, I'll give you an example, and this is I think basically a FanDuel cheat code. If any of you are playing FanDuel, the center one base position on FanDuel, it combines a ton of catchers and first basemen. Oftentimes, a lot of those guys are strong hitters, and the reality is, you just see a lot of those guys go almost zero owned, especially on big slates. So like, you know, last year I kept wanting to one off the. I really added this for that. That was a big reason, is that I wanted to one off those all those center one base guys because they're all like 1% owned. And they hit a home run, and you have 10% of a guy, you're getting huge leverage. But it was just really hard to make the builder use them because it was always starting with a stack, and then that stack had a center one base a lot, and there just wasn't a spot for him. So that's honestly like a one easy use case here that you could use it for.
Absolutely. So again, if you guys have questions about the builder, about tonight's slate in general, let us know. Throw them in the chat. We'll happily answer them. If you guys have questions about this particular building process, let us know. Jack, what I've done here in this limited exposure to all players below salary is a great little cheat code for me in a couple ways. One, we see the top MLB DFS players in 150 max. Most of them have a max exposure of like 25 to 30% to any one hitter. Just because baseball is such a variant sport, right? Look at NBA, max exposure can literally be 100% to a guy because the range of outcomes is so wide in baseball. Most top players don't have a ton of exposure to one specific hitter. And this also, by doing this rule here, also includes any really trashy pitchers that I might not want a lot of. So if I set it to 6,125%, this is basically telling the builder, when you build my lineups, any player that's priced 6,100 or below, do not use more than 25% of them in my lineups. And this is a great way to really accomplish both of those feats.
Yep, I use that too. It's a great one, especially if you especially with that kind of positional jamming that I talked about. If there's like you don't have a lot of guys at one position, it just ensures that you're not going to randomly end up with like 70% of a guy, which even if he's the best guy in the slate, you probably still don't want that. Yeah, it's just a shortcut. It's the same as if you were going to set that max exposure column, but again, like you said, it's a way to do it globally instead of having to type it in for every single player.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go to the stacks. And I think is the most important part. And some of the stacks tonight, I'm going to show you a couple rules that I built, a couple of things that we should talk about for tonight's slate. First, Jack, I don't have anybody clicked, but I probably should, so I'm going to do this right now. This new anchor feature in the builder, which was recently added a couple of weeks ago. An amazing feature because for those of you who've ever used any optimizer whatsoever and you've built angel stacks and somehow you get some lineups without Mike Trout and you're like, why the hell would I ever stack the Angels without Mike Trout? That makes zero sense. You can select the stack anchor, and maybe Otani is the case here too, right? Any angel stack. By clicking this button next to this checkbox next to a player, whenever the stack is used from that team, these players are automatically used in that stack. That way you don't get any really crazy angel stacks that don't include these guys. Again, you can leave it unchecked by default, but Jack, if there are certain scenarios where, let's say, especially one guy is head and shoulders above the rest in the OF index, you're like, if I'm going to stack this team, I want that guy. He's a big reason for it. This stack anchor is a fantastic feature.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we used to do with custom rules, which you still could do it that way, but it's just this is a huge amount of time savings, and you hit exactly right. It just prevents you from getting like some weird like 6, 7, 8, 9 stack on a team, which I don't know what the data is, but I imagine that that doesn't win a lot. Sometimes it's pretty obvious. I usually just let the OF index tell me what to do here. If in doubt, I'm curious what you do. I tend to just sort of lean toward the earlier order guys. Like if all else fails, I will, I'll just pick the leadoff guy as one of the anchors. I think the Mets are a good example because like Alonso is sort of always a guy, but I don't want to like have him in every single lineup. So like sometimes I'll just pick the leadoff guy or maybe the 3 or 2 hitter.
I think that makes sense. That makes a ton of sense, especially at a position like first base where there's so many good options that you may not want to have Alonso in all of them. I think that makes a ton of sense. So, all right, if we go to the stacks feature here,
And hey, Brian, let me just sorry, I think we brushed over this. Just to be clear with folks, if you click more than one of those checkboxes, it means it will use at least one. It's not going to be both.
got it.
So if you click just one, it'll be that guy every time. In your example there, it would be basically the same as making a min one Trout Otani when any Angels player is in a lab. That's really the custom rule that it's creating.
This is a hell of a lot easier than making that custom rule. I'll tell you that.
Yes.
That's for sure. So, all right, bring up the stack menu here, the stack settings. And I'm going to explain a couple of the features I've used here. I use these same settings both in my small field and both in this 150 max example. So the default here on the second row, min players in a stack, max players in a stack. Let's say, for instance, you don't want any 5-man stacks, right? You could change this to 4. Now the max stack will be 4 players. Max gap between hitters is, and Jack, maybe you can explain this a little better than I can. Explain the difference between max gap between hitters, max gap, and full stack. And I'll explain how I've been using them. I even changed it as recently as a couple of days ago.
Yeah, so I mean, the easy one to start with is the single gap, right? So single gap is just quite literally the max separation in the batting order between 92 hitters in the stack, right? So if you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, your max gap is 0 because they're all adjacent. If you had a 1, 2, 3, 5, your max gap would be 1, right? Because there's a single batter between the 3 and the 5. So I guess I'll pause there, Brian. How do you typically use that in your builds?
So in the past, I've been very adamant about a max gap of 1, right? I want no more than one batter in between my stack, right? So like you said, if a 1, 3, 5, 7 stack, that's fine, right? That's enough correlation. But you do see often GPP winning lineups where that stack's a little larger. Maybe you see a 1, 3, 7, or a 1, 2, 5, 6, or something like that. That certainly happens from time to time. So I've been doing this more I've been changing it to 2 more recently just to get a little more flexibility. But in my secondary stacks, I'll change that max gap to 1 because a secondary stack, you're playing them because of the correlation. I want as much correlation possible in those secondary stacks. And I hope that makes sense because in this example tonight, the Dodgers, I've set them to a max of 3 players. I don't want to use the Dodgers as my primary stack, and I've been doing this every single slate so far this year, is if it's the most popular stack, especially by a wide margin, or if it's the most popular couple of stacks, I'll set it to a max secondary stack. I don't want to ever 5-man stack this because I'm competing with too many people if they go off. So I'll set a max of 3, but the max gap to 1. That way, if I do use Dodgers, I'm only secondary stacking them, and I'm getting the maximum correlation if I do.
Yep, that makes it, and that makes sense. And so, for example, what you're saying is, the reason you want a small gap in a secondary stack is because you're really playing for that 2 hitter getting on base and that 3 or 4 hitter knocking them in, right? I mean, whereas the primary stack, you're really just saying this team is going to go nuts, and I just want to capture as much scoring as I can. Is that the way you're thinking about it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to put it. And if I go back to the stack dashboard, right, this is how I normally look at it. Let's refresh it here to make sure we got all the updated numbers. DK main slate, sort by ownership, and yes, Dodgers are in their own tier by themselves tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if it's even higher tonight. But 73% cumulative ownership, that's a team. I'm not 5-man stacking them. And if they go off, so be it. Last night, I was sweating my balls off hoping that they wouldn't go off because they were insane chalk and I was ahead going into the late game, right? And there's going to be days where they go off. But our research has shown that you're much better off. Your ROI is so much higher if you don't fully stack these chalky teams. And so no matter if they're ranked number 1 in the model like they are tonight, you got to just trust the variance in baseball and hope that the chalk busts. And that's why I set the rule like I did for the Dodgers tonight. I also have this rule here, this high owned rule, right? Because the Dodgers are going to be popular, I also don't want them as a secondary stack with some other relatively popular teams. So the White Sox, Houston, and New York looked pretty popular tonight, Jack. So I clicked all 4 of these teams, saved the rule. Now there will be no lineups that I build with any of those 4 combinations.
Yep, you segued right into another great feature. I think this is a really important one for NHL and MLB, and you hit it right. And so what this exclude stacks is doing is saying exactly that. It's allowing you to prevent 2 stacks from being combined. And as Brian explained, the reason you want to do that is, if both of those stacks go off, you're just going to be up against so many of those kind of cashy builds that it's just going to be really hard to win. Brian, do you know what percent? I mean, what would you guess? What percent of the field is even actually, full stacking versus playing those kind of like 2-2-1-1-1-1 kind of lineups?
So they're playing a lot more frequently. I saw a tweet from it's Sports Projections. I'm only shouting them out because they congratulated me on my UFC win on Saturday night, but they do great work, right? And they tweeted an image from a baseball slate the other day that somewhere near 30% of the field didn't stack whatsoever. There was no primary stack in their lineup. So the field's getting sharper. Obviously, 70% is stacking in some capacity, but it's still 30% of trashy cash type lineups that are being entered, which is way too high.
Right. And then, a large portion of those are going to have LA Dodgers, right? And other popular guys in there. So even if those guys hit, if you have them all in your same lineup, it's just going to be really hard to win. So yeah, that's a great way to use it. Do you ever use the pair limits in the way that you build?
So not for baseball. I did use it for hockey some, where especially if I'm just getting a ton of the same type of combination. Let me see here. Let me look at one thing really quickly. Multi lineups, team pair exposure. So like Chicago and LA, the most common stack here. Let's say I want a little more diversity. Maybe I would go back, Jack, and say, all right, limit Chicago and LA pairs to X amount. And that way I just get a little more diversity in my lineups.
Yeah, this is something for 150 lineups that I use religiously. Honestly, I think it's like probably the most important thing for me, is other than selecting teams. And the reason is, the builder is an optimizer, so it's going to try to jam the highest projected things it can. And oftentimes, if I'm saying, have 4 teams as my main stacks, I really want it to sort of even out the combos between those. Like I don't need, 80 lineups that are the same 2 teams together, especially in like a 4-4.
Right.
It's kind of interesting. I'm still figuring out what the right number is. I usually am sort of in the 10 to 20 range, but that's what it's for, right? Is I can set an all to say 20, and when I build 150 lineups, it's never going to use the same 2 teams together more than 20 times. And then, like you said, you can, on top of the all rule, you can create team specific rules, or you can create a team all, and so you can basically have this hierarchy of pair rules that it will follow, and really you can customize it as much as you want. But it's a great way to ensure that the teams are getting used evenly, and that it's trying to pair as many of those teams together as possible.
Matt in the chat says Jack Psycho trains. Jack, are you known for just
I
training a bunch of crazy lineups?
Yeah, I think I learned based on ROI last year that it's a lot better for FanDuel than DraftKings. But yeah, I mean on FanDuel, I will jam 4 teams, 150 lineups, just 25 combos or whatever it comes out. Yeah, I think it's 25 combos. Yeah, I do psycho train a lot because I'm playing this against 40,000 people, so it's
right.
You got to hit all the right guys. But
that is for sure. That is for sure. So, all right, lineup structure on the left here. And let me go back to the small field really quickly, and I'll show you how I've been using this. Let's go back to small field. This may take a minute because I'm running 1,000 programs whatsoever. Let's bring our faces back really quickly, Jack. Cool. There we go. What's up? All right, so I'll build this really quickly. Let's look at tonight's slate while we're waiting for this to load up and rebuild some stuff. Who are you looking at tonight, Jack? Have you built any lineups yet? Any teams in particular that stand out to you?
I have not. I just got home from work, and I only have one. I have a $150 ticket on FanDuel. I may just enter that. We'll see how much time I have after the video. So I'll turn it over to you. What have you learned so far?
Oh, man. I don't know. Like I said, I'm looking to get crazy. So I'm probably going to look at some of and what helped me last night, and this may seem counterintuitive, right? But I've been looking at teams that are the lowest owned projected, and then just seeing who matches up with the worst pitchers in our model. Because like you said, our pitching model is a cheat code. It's our best projected part of the model for baseball. And if a guy is projected really lowly as a pitcher, we should probably consider the opposing stack, especially if they're going to be low owned in tournaments.
Yeah, I would dare say, no offense to the other sports, I think the pitcher model might be just the best thing. Like it is unreal.
It's pretty.
So yeah, I think that's a great strategy. Yeah, I mean just stack against bad pitchers that are like, with teams that are not known, especially on a slate this big, right? There's got to be some teams that are. I'm just pulling up the dashboard. There's got to be some teams that don't have a lot of ownership that probably should.
Oh yeah, a ton, absolutely. And yeah, what a novel concept to just stack against bad pitchers.
Would you ever consider something like, LA Dodgers are super popular. They do project well. Would you ever consider kind of making them a primary, one-off team, like trying to get some of each of those guys individually, or would you just say full fade? Their ownership is too high.
Oh man, I actually think it makes a ton of sense to fade them completely, right? Because if one guy goes off, you know, I don't know. I guess I don't know the best way to think about it, right? There are definitely different ways to play it, but if they score 3 runs, right, no one hits a home run, I mean, you're in business, and if you fully fade them. So I think there are definitely different ways to play it. The model, in fact, likes them a ton tonight, so that's the other reason I would probably end up playing them. If they rank them, outside the top 5, I would consider fully fading, but I think it depends. So, all right, let's see. Let's go back to the full screen here. There we go. All right, and so you'll see here what I've done. The lineup structure on the left is, let me get my page up here. Okay, so basically your priority for the stack types you want in your lineups that are being built. 5-2-1 I have set as the first priority. If you can't build as many 5-2-1s, I want 5-3s. I actually have 4-2-1-1s tonight just because I want to see what's possible, right? That's kind of a trashy type build, but I've seen that win on some larger slates. And so, Jack, what I'll do is my first priority, max 50%. That means of my 300 lineups, 150 maximum will be of the 5-2-1 variety. And then it'll start building 5-3s. And I only want 25% of those because I do want to see what some of these 4-2-1-1s look like. And so, Jack, I'll let it build, and let's go to the lineups that I have built so far. And let's go to the team tab, and we scroll down, and we'll see the lineup structure. And go figure, because you built this, it works perfectly well. And I got 150 5-2-1s, 75 5-3s, 75 4-2-1s. And now I can go to the card or table feature and just see what types of lineups are being used most at the top. If I'm getting a bunch of 4-2-1-1s, maybe I should reconsider and use that as my primary stack, because that's what the builder and our model and the projections are telling us is probably the best move for tonight.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I would be curious to know what the field data is on the for DraftKings on the 4-man versus 5-man. I mean, they're probably both both viable. Do you ever use the new, segue to new features here, the lock and rebuild? Maybe we can talk a minute about that and how that can be used.
Yes, I use it pretty much all the time, especially for small field contests, because I'm trying to build 300 lineups with like a billion different rules, right? So I'm going to go back here really quickly, because in the other build, actually, you know what? Let's just build here. I'm going to rebuild. Let me make sure make sure everything's unlocked.
Unlock everything. And for those of you who, if you were around for the very first version of the lineup builder, which was, I don't know, Brian, 3 years ago at this point, probably.
Yeah.
Very rudimentary, but it did have this feature actually, and we brought it back. So what it allows you to do is you see the lock and unlock buttons in table or card view. There is a tutorial video, but very briefly, it allows you to basically lock a lineup, and that means when you rebuild, that lineup will just be given back to you unaltered. And so it allows you to keep certain lineups and rebuild. Or, as I think Brian will allude to, if you got really strict constraints and you're not getting all the lineups you want, you can basically lock all your lineups and just hit build again, and you're basically giving it another chance at trying to find those extra lineups that it might have missed the first time around.
Yeah, because at least if you've used the builder before, we've all been there where it says could only build 149 of 150, and you're like, Jesus Christ, I just need one more lineup. Please just build that lineup so I don't have to rebuild everything. And so this allows you to do that. So let's just do this. I'm going to rebuild my 300, right? Let me make sure there are no errors first, because I haven't updated the projections in about an hour or so. Maybe there are guys who are not in the lineup anymore, but let's get this initiated and get it started, and then we'll bring our faces back here. Chris in the chat says the plug for the main slate is live on the site, so go check it out. Chris and Troy do a fantastic job every single day putting out the top plays, lineup strategies. I know Chris updated some of the correlation charts for today's slate, so make sure you go check that out, occupyfantasy.com. Link is also in the description below. Let me get a couple of these lineups built here to make sure I don't have any errors on my end, and then we'll bring our faces back here. But okay, so we got 4 out of 300, so the process is started. So let me bring us back, Jack.
Yeah, and unfortunately, despite all the speed enhancements over the years, baseball, there's just a lot of combos, especially on a big slate like this. It does take a little bit of time to build 300. I think even like Fantasy Cruncher has time issues, so I don't feel that bad about it. Someday we will have a build 300 MLB lineups in 15 seconds, and then we can just retire because that's all we'll ever need. But for now,
I don't mind it, man. I don't mind it because I understand that all the constraints that I'm putting in, it's pretty crazy that it could even build what it builds in the time it does. Because again, I'm pushing it to its limits to get because
yeah,
again I'm picky and you're picky as well. Like we want to make sure that's why you built this, why we collaborate on this because we want to build lineups the way we want to build them. And if that's going to happen, it probably takes a little bit longer than the average lineup builder.
yeah, and that's another thing we can tout is that for those of you who don't know, I mean, this thing was built from the ground up with the mind of Brian, who is a professional, very profitable player who wants to push all these settings to the limit, who wanted all sorts of crazy settings that didn't exist anywhere else. And that's why it's built this way, and that's why we put these videos out there. Hopefully, people watch this and just copy a lot of the stuff that he's saying and make some money.
So Moose and I are going to go live tomorrow night. Actually, we're going to review my Saturday win from UFC, the 100K win, because first of all, I wasn't thrilled with my strategy for that slate because it was such a high risk approach, but I had to because just the way the slate was shaking out. But I couldn't have been happier with my execution of my strategy. I had so many rules and different settings for when guys were in lineups, when guys weren't in lineups. And in fact, I'm going to full screen the builder once again really quickly. There we go. And the special salary usage tab here, it allows you to, because up here we have the basic, right? And I have 48K to 50K. But maybe you want less salary or more salary depending on who's in the lineup. And the example you gave, Jack, for baseball is if you use a trashy pitcher, let me go back here really quickly. Use a trashy pitcher, you don't want to leave 2K on the table. You want to use most of your salary, right? Because you could possibly upgrade to a better pitcher. For me, on Saturday, I was using a 5% fighter, and I was like, well, if I use him, I don't need to be that contrarian and leave a ton of salary. But there was a 55% fighter, and if I'm going to use him, I probably need to save more salary because so many other people are going to use him. So I had different rules for those guys based on who was in the lineup and who wasn't. I mean, just a genius addition that really helps with sports uniqueness for the most part, but also just make sure you don't get any really bad lineups.
Yeah, super useful. Honestly, we built it as a showdown thing, and then we realized it's actually quite useful for classic. And yeah, the pitcher, for folks building MLB tonight, I mean, if you kind of think about common sense, right? Like a bad pitcher is not going to outscore, Rodon probably, right? I mean, is it possible? Yes, but more than likely, Carlos Rodon will score more pure points than any of those bad pitchers down there. So if you're using one of those bad pitchers, you want to use enough salary so that someone couldn't enter the same lineup as you, but just swap in the better pitcher.
Yes.
But if you're playing the elite pitchers, then you can afford to leave more because hitting, like you've talked about, is such an event-based random thing that cheap hitters very, very often outscore the expensive guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's perfectly said. Let's see. Raging Bull in the chat. What's up, man? Appreciate you joining us. So, Jack, as you'll see here on screen, only 139 of the 300 lineups were built. So that means we got, 161 lineups more that needs to be built. And that's because we're trying so many combinations. Let me show you what I'm going to do first, and I'll have you explain it, right? So go back to multi-lineups. I scroll down, just confirm. I got 139 lineups built. I need 300 for what I'm trying to accomplish because I want the most combinations to see what's possible, right? So what I can do in the shortcuts tab, lock all visible lineups, right? So this will take, you'll see the green lock button will turn to a gray lock button over here on the right. And basically what this means is these 139 lineups will be kept. Let's put them to the side. Let's keep those. And now let's rebuild to try to get to that 300 number. So I'm locking those. And let's go back. We'll build lineups, and now it'll start from lineup 140 to try to get to 300. We might have to do this a couple times because so many goddamn rules that we're trying to accomplish here. But Jack, just maybe for the uninitiated, someone who doesn't know about optimization or lineup builders or coding or whatever, why would the lineup builder only be able to build 139 one time, and then it goes back and with the same settings able to build more lineups?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously a lot of ways to build lineups, and one thing that we built into this from the beginning is just an eye toward diversity and randomness. So, especially when you're on the high randomizer, it's not necessarily just only building optimal lineups. There's an element of randomness to the selections that it's making, and there's huge benefits of that. So you can get different combinations, different exposures. But the downside of that is it's not going to necessarily find every single possible lineup that it could use every single time you build. There are some limits in there, where basically when it has to throw away a certain number of bad lineups, it'll say, okay, I tried enough. I'm going to just stop. I don't want to waste this guy's time for 15 minutes. I'm going to just give him the lineups I have and tell him I couldn't make all of them. And so that's really what it's doing. But when you lock and rerun, you're just giving it another crack. You're basically resetting the bad counter to 0. You're letting it keep all the ones it already found, and you're giving it another chance to go back and find other ones.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. And again, for those who don't understand optimization or even just time-saving techniques, like we don't want you to sit there for 20 minutes before lock trying to get 150 lineups, right? We want to get you the 150, and then you can pare it down if you need to, right? So now you'll see we're past the 149 mark. Now we're building more lineups. Generally, for me, for the amount of rules it takes, for the amount of rules that I use, Jack, it takes about 4 runs to get to 300 for MLB, which is totally fine. And I just have to understand that if I'm redoing it before lock, for me, what I do, I come around 5 o'clock. Right? Put in all my settings, build some initial runs to see what's possible, start to highlight teams I like and teams I don't like. And then once I get confirmed lineups at about 6:50, 10 15 minutes before lock, I'll run it 4 more times, right, to get to 300, and then I'll pick up my lineups that I'm going to use.
I'm impressed that it actually gets there in 4 runs. I mean, that's you know what? I'll take that. I'm sure you'll take it too. I mean, that's a good balance. I mean, that's exactly how it's supposed to work. Yeah. And what were you doing before? Just praying each time?
Oh yeah, dude, praying to every possible god and building 150. And normally it would work for 150, but like it was just, I
Yeah.
mean, it was such a stressor, right? And
Yep.
I've seen
Yep.
this for other builders even more so, where it's like you can't even build 150 in a reasonable amount of time. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. So
Yeah.
let me see here.
Let's highlight one other way you can use it. You'll notice in that shortcut it says all visible. And that means if you say instead of doing what we're doing here, where we're locking everything and just trying to get more, say you built at 5 p.m., some hitter gets ruled out, right? And you love the rest of your lineups, but you got to swap that guy out. Actually, it's probably a good way to talk about that. There's a couple ways you can do it. One way is you can basically lock all the visible lineups like Brian did, and then you search for that player in either the table or card view, and it'll filter only to the lineups that have that player. And then you click unlock all visible lineups, and now you've kept everything except the ones where you have to rebuild because that guy's out. And that way, when you rebuild, you'll get more. You'll get new ones and replace the guy that's out, but you won't touch all the ones that you already liked.
Yeah, so I just looked at the first name I saw here, and Andrew Vaughn, and apparently the builder really likes Chicago White Sox stack tonight. For those of you watching this and might want to build some lineups after this, right? So Andrew Vaughn, let's say for whatever reason he got ruled out, or I'm like, man, fuck that guy, I don't want to use him anymore, right? I type in Andrew Vaughn or Vaughn in the search bar at the top right here, and then I clicked unlock all visible lineups. Now if I rebuild, any lineup with Andrew Vaughn will not be used. Those lineups will not be kept, but every other lineup will be kept. So Jack, that's a really good wave, especially for like late scratches before lock. You're like, I need to get this guy out, lock everything except for the lineups with this guy, and then rebuild.
Yep. And another thing we added that I think solves a huge pain point for people is you'll see in the top there's the global swap now. And for those of you who've done this, you've lived the pain. DraftKings, you can search for the player and see him in your lineups. But if the guy you want to swap to is $100 more expensive, you can't do it.
Even if you have the salary.
90% of your lineups have it's really kind of astonishing. 'Cause, I mean, they run a real website. It's kind of astonishing they never fix that. FanDuel, you can swap to a more expensive guy, but good luck finding the lineups that have that guy because I don't know if you've ever done this, Brian.
Yes.
The Control F in one hand and scrolling. You don't play FanDuel that much, but it's a disaster.
Dude, it was miserable for football, especially, right? Like late swaps, it was just impossible.
So the late swap is there. This global swap is available pre-lock and post-lock in the late swap options. It's very simple. You pick the guy you want to swap out. You pick the guy you want to swap in. It goes through every lineup. It will try to do it as long as you have salary to do it and it fits team and game rules, etc. It'll do it, and it'll tell you how many it swapped and how many it couldn't. And then of course you can go search for the player afterwards and just verify that if he's still there or not.
Right, so I'm just going to do this really quickly. Swap out Andrew Vaughn for whatever reason. Swap in this Daniel Cabrera guy. We'll see what the builder does for us. And then we'll swap it right back just so we can see what it looks like. But, yeah, this is huge for pre-lock late scratches, but it's also huge for the new post-lock late swap mode, which we'll probably have to do a separate video for because it's such an intricate idea. But, Jack, I think that was the last missing piece, at least for NBA, was the ability to late swap properly. When it's NBA mostly, right? There are other sports where news happens, but NBA where shit literally happens every hour after lock, right? Being able to properly late swap lineups with the right optimization is so huge, and the new late swap mode that you added is key to tackling that problem.
Yeah, and I think what we did that's I think probably better than anyone else that has this, or I certainly better than Roto Grinders. But it's not like a separate interface. It's literally the exact same builder interface. So you can still, even when you're in late swap, you can still use every single feature and rule that you would use pre-lock. Of course, if guys are locked in your lineups, it may not do as well meeting all those constraints, but it's not like some very slimmed down basic thing that's kind of off to the side. It's really the full lineup builder, just with your lineups that you already created and entered.
For sure, and we'll have to do some type of other video for that. So you'll see here, right? So I swapped out Andrew Vaughn, swapped in Daniel Cabrera. This is literally meaningless, right? You don't want to do this tonight. But you'll see that all 61 lineups were updated. If you see in the background here, it says no matching records found because I was originally searching for Andrew Vaughn. That means we have no more Andrew Vaughn lineups. I'm going to swap this right back because I don't want this Daniel Cabrera guy in my lineups. So let's get
I think I smell a pinch hit home run from Daniel Cabrera coming.
Is he even?
Is he even on the roster?
Yeah, I don't even know.
I don't know. I'm gonna remember that name somehow, like a year from now. That dude's gonna hit a grand slam and win a slate. And be like, dude, remember that video?
We tried to swap him in when he wasn't even in the majors. All right, so we'll swap this back out. Again, if you guys have questions, it's 5:56. We'll stay around for a few more minutes. Jack, as we're doing this, any other features, strategies using the builder that we have not used yet that people can use to build profitable MLB lineups?
Yeah, one thing I use a lot is we haven't talked about custom rules. I use them in MLB to actually limit kind of those turd late hitting guys. So if you go in there and you can create this, what I'll like to do is it's a little flexible. What I do is I create my stack pool, and then I sort by batting order I filter to only players I'm stacking. I sort by batting order, and I just kind of eyeball the 9, 8, 7, 6 hitters, and I kind of just make a macro decision of okay, I don't want more than 1 or 2 of those kind of guys. So I'll maybe make a rule that's use a max 2 hitters over batting order 6, and that way every lineup I'm only going to have 2 7 8 9s. It avoids those lineups where you get a 6 7 8 9 stack or something like that, where it's trying to jam too many studs. It gives you more balance. So that's one way that I use custom rules in MLB.
Cool. All right, let me. I'll showcase that here in a second, as my computer is thoroughly struggling to do anything. So let's see here. All right, 5:57. A couple more minutes. Again, if you guys have questions about tonight's slate, I'm planning to win the 200K. If you guys want to get second, let me know. I'll help you out with.
How many people are in that?
Around 1,100. I haven't checked the overlay just yet, but around 1,100. But I would say that this is the perfect contest size for Whistles Goes Woo, who is probably a sizable favorite to win this event.
Let's see what the max. How many can you enter? 33. Oof. Yeah. Is his baseball one of? I mean, I know he's good at everything, but he's generally doing well at MLB this year.
Yeah, he won a similar size contest last year for $1 million in baseball.
Okay.
But yeah, this is his sweet spot. These smaller, not as large but not as small GPPs really
mid-size. Yeah.
Yes. So custom rules, right? So we'll say limit trash. That is the name of our rule. Max of 2 batters. Over batting, right? Over batting order 6. You said.
Yeah, and it depends, and a lot of times I'll use a rule like this, and I will fall short of my number of lineups, and I'll have to tweak it. But it's more of just a general way to ensure that you don't get those lineups with a bunch of Ohtani, Trout, Ferrero, and then 7 7 8 8 9. Right? I mean, that's probably not going to win very often.
Right.
Yeah, but but the fact that the batting order is in there as a field allows you to just kind of set this to wherever you want. And you could go the other way. You could do a min 2 under 4. All sorts of ways you could use this.
Absolutely. So really good stuff there, Jack. Any other features we haven't talked about that we need to hit on?
I think we probably, because it's you and how you build lineups, I think we've hit just about every single feature that we possibly could. We didn't talk about the forcing pitcher at all.
Okay,
I did add some more new stuff to that.
here we go.
So previously that was just a checkbox. It was sort of like you can either force the pitcher in stacks or not. Now you actually have a choice. You can choose, do I want only the pitcher with a stack, which is two or more hitters in this case? Do I want him only with a one-off? Am I okay with either one, but I want, at least one of those? Do I not care? That's a no preference. Or you can actually prevent stacks. So it's just a little bit more. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on pitcher stacking? Obviously, in NHL, goalie stacking is a big thing, but I don't know much about it with MLB.
Yeah, I don't have any concrete data on it, and to me, it always feels like, we talk about game script in other sports, right? But if your MLB team is up 9-0 and your stack goes off, it makes it feel less likely that they're just going to run that pitcher out for like 8 innings, right? Where if it's a closer game, maybe they'll leave him in. And I don't know. I don't have any hard data to back this up, right? So maybe you're more likely to do it on a secondary stack or whatever it may be. I don't know. I don't have any true preference. I just leave it as no preference. Let the builder do it. It's kind of like game stacking in MLB. If it happens, it happens. I'm not looking to target. I'm not looking to avoid it. If it happens, it does. But yeah, that's a long way of saying I really don't know.
Yeah, I think the only time I've done it is sort of like a tiebreaker, like if I'm hand building and like I have to click in a pitcher and it's like there's three guys that I can't decide. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'll play the guy that's on the same team. Especially maybe if it's like a super cheap dude where that 4 point, I think it's 4 point win, right? That
Yep.
actually matters. If you're playing like a 10K pitcher, you're going for strikeouts, obviously not the win. So
That's a good point. It may matter when you're playing the really bad pitchers, where the difference between 9 points and 13 points is a big difference on them
yeah.
returning value. Been there very many times.
Gotta
So.
love those. Gotta love those guys.
All right, let's bring us back here on screen, Jack. There we go. I'm crushing the tech games today. I'm really shocked doing this without Moose. So, and I'll bring the stack dashboard back up. We'll do one more refresh to see if we get any new ownership numbers, any new top stacks. Let me see here. LA, both 1 and 2. Houston, Philly, Chicago, Colorado. Okay, so
Any big weather things tonight?
yeah, so I haven't checked since we went live, but there were potential issues in the Miami-Washington game and the New York-Baltimore game. It sounds like Washington's going to be a delay, and they'll probably play afterwards. But the Nats weather team is God knows what they're doing. It's very possible that they could postpone when they could play. And the Yankees game, they'll have to play through rain, so we have to make sure that they're committed to playing. So again, we always talk about Kevin Roth, Roto Grinders. He does a great job. Go check him out. Our weather dashboard also shows precipitation chances, so go check all of that out. So I want to say I appreciate everyone listening to this entire video. If you've done it, it means you're a serious player and you're serious about winning, right? Because a vast majority of people will watch a small sliver of this video, realize it's too much, and they're not committed to winning, right? You really have to understand all these things if you want to win. And again, we're showcasing all of this because obviously we would like you to use the lineup builder. We think it's a fantastic tool. But Jack, I will say that all the things we talked about today can be utilized in a person's approach, just hand building or using honestly any other tool out there, right? Because we want to teach you to think about building lineups properly to get to the top of GPPs.
Yeah, and what's really cool about the Occupy model, the Occupy kind of company and the way you've done this is, you are thinking very much about lineup construction and contests and all those things, and I'm like very focused on like the software side of it. And we found many times that those lead us to kind of learn from each other,
Yes.
and find different ways to build lineups. And we just hope that you all listen and can join in and offer some thoughts and hopefully like you said, get in here and build some lineups and win some money. And we have to say good luck in that 200K contest tonight.
Thank you.
Luck to everyone else playing for second.
Appreciate that for sure. And you know what? The funny thing is, and I'll let you get out of here, Jack, because I know you have to build lineups too, is we could do this same stream a month from now, and it would look probably pretty different because 28 days of using the builder, we would probably come up with some new strategies, some new techniques, new things we want to do. Hell, you might even come up with a new feature in the builder based on what you've been building recently. And that's why I love the Discord server, because we get so many people using this that there may be ideas that they have that they could implement. There may be like, hey, I've been using it this way, and I think this is a great way to use it. So what we tell you today, is not an end-all be-all. There's so many different ways to use this builder, and it's about getting in there and actually using it yourself to figure out the best way to use it for you.
Absolutely, you hit it.
Cool. So for Jack, you can follow him on Twitter at DFS_Magic_. I'm at Brian Jester FF. OccupyFantasy.com/lineup builder is where you can learn more about how to use this fantastic tool that Jack built. And OccupyFantasy.com is where you can find all the daily plugs, the Occupy model. And I think that's all the promos. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, get notified when we go live, uploading new videos. Give us a thumbs up if you like this type of content. It's really long form. It's not for everybody, but give us a thumbs up if you appreciate it. And again, any questions, join our Discord server or comment on this video after it's published, and we'll happily answer them for you. So for Jack, for Brian, everyone out there listening, good luck tonight, and let's take something down.